How's it going, everybody? This is Dailies to Download. My name is Chad. With me, as usual, is Erik. And this week, we are going to be reviewing another movie. It's not really a movie challenge. We didn't really challenge each other to anything this week, Erik. But
I feel like when we use the term movie challenge, it needs to be like somewhat torturous, right? Like
yeah,
you
I'm
have to
sure we'll get into that at some point.
yeah, something like it takes years off your life to watch it, and you have to really challenge yourself as well as the other person.
Well, you know what? The next one, I'll make it a bad movie, and it'll be a movie you have to watch on your phone. So that'll be something to look forward to, not look forward to.
Okay. That's
this
6
week,
hours.
Yeah, this week we're going to be talking about Judas and the Black Messiah, which recently came on to HBO Max and in theaters simultaneously on February 12th, 2021. It is directed by Shaka King. Runtime 126 minutes. It stars Daniel Kaluuya, Lakeith Stanfield, and Jesse Plemons, among others. And the plot is William O'Neill, who is a career criminal, I should say, turned FBI informant who infiltrates the Illinois Black Panther Party and is tasked with keeping tabs on their leader, Chairman Fred Hampton. His handler is Special Agent Roy Mitchell. Hampton's political prowess grows just as he's falling in love with a fellow revolutionary, easier for me to say, Deborah Johnson. So that is the basics of the movie. And you know what? Before we get into what we think of the movie, I will say that this movie really, and not that there hasn't been any other movies or documentaries about the Black Panthers. We'll get to that later on. But I really do think that the amount of buzz that this is getting, and the fact that it was released digitally in on HBO Max in a high-profile way, is kind of opening up this topic and really showing people more about the Black Panthers than they might have known before. And it got me thinking about that as far as what I learned in school and what was in the textbooks that I grew up with, which was very little about the Black Panthers. And if there was anything at all, it would have probably been limited to like a paragraph or so, and would have just basically mentioned what they were and that they probably were prone to violence or militant or what have you, something along those lines, which certainly is a not totally factual definition of what the group stood for, and really kind of tries to brush under the rug their impact on history, I would say. So I thought a lot about that after I watched this movie, and some of the interviews out there with some of the people that were involved. And I don't know, what do you think? Did you, when you grew up, was it similar in that what you learned about them in high school? Maybe not college necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I have retained from those years in terms of going to school, because I'm like, how at that age too, I was like, maybe I was not as engaged as I would be now about about history and things like that. It would have probably been mentioned, but always in a broader context that may get a paragraph in like the Vietnam chapter,
right?
Or it's in a larger scale thing, like maybe it's a little bit posed as, not so much posed as their own group and their own thing, but posed as an opposition to like Nixon or something, right. And so that's really it. And you don't really get a lot of, you don't really know, for me at least, like any individual names of the leaders or Angela Davis or anybody like that, right. Which now maybe it seems like that's changing. I don't know how that would change in high school and middle school, wwhatever, but yeah, I definitely.
At most, you might see a mention of Bobby Seale.
Yeah, at most, yeah. And I almost found what's somewhat funny now is that, and again, this is also intentional, but Marvel's Black Panther is in some ways a nod to the Black Panthers, but also not, but also of the same era that dealt with some of the same race kind of stuff. So it's a different connotation. But also nodding to that history. So I feel like a lot of people now growing up are going to think of that.
Yeah.
And not even associated with the 60s movement.
Right. Well, you know what? Let's get into the film itself. So I'll just talk about the performances here to start. So I mean, the performances in this movie are very, very good. Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield obviously work together in Get Out. It's not like they had a ton of scenes together, but they certainly have chemistry here. I thought that their acting, at least the two of them, and certainly Jesse Plemons, was kind of a blend of being grounded in reality, with kind of that the essential dashes of flair when there needed to be. I thought the performances were very, very good. Both of those actors, I think, are really improving every step of the way, and I can say the same thing about Jesse Plemons, who like it improves so much each time I see him. And now the next time you see him, he's going to be the lead in a Martin Scorsese movie, which
Yeah.
was the recent news bit. So, I mean that
He'll be
it'll be
second after playing Hoffa's son in Irishman.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. I mean his career is really on a upward trend, which is great for him.
A real like, do you get like Philip Seymour Hoffman vibes? Like, I mean, he looks like not a spitting image, but
Yeah,
there sometimes I'm like, wow, okay, I can see it from this angle. Like, there's like a Philip Seymour Hoffman,
in terms of look, I can see where
that
you're getting.
Irishy whatever, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's a
In,
similar,
in terms of acting, no,
different,
not at all.
different.
But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a very superficial person, I just.
oh, I can see that. I can see that. I mean, you think of him in think what was he on Friday Night Lights and initially when he was really young,
Yeah.
and now obviously he's gained some weight, but at the same time his acting keeps improving. So hey,
Yeah.
if he's going for the Philip Seymour Hoffman vibe,
Hey,
power to me.
he was in the new Charlie Kaufman movie.
Yeah,
He's co-lead of that. Like Hoffman did Synecdoche, right? So who knows? Just say it.
absolutely.
Throwing
Hey,
it out
a lot of now there's a lot of connections. We'll explore that in a future episode.
there. Yes.
Um, but yeah, the acting all around in this is very good, and Daniel Kaluuya is getting more awards attention than anybody else. Although I would say Lakeith Stanfield is just as good as him in this. He doesn't have the showier role, obviously, but he is really, really good, and looks a lot like the actual guy. So, what did you think, Eric, of the acting here?
So yeah, I thought the acting was pretty much across the board very strong. I've read some criticism from some people, which I think is, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think it's interesting, is that both Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya are like 10 years older than their characters.
Right.
Like Fred Hampton, I think was 20, was he 21? He was 21 when he was assassinated. And I believe William O'Neill was also in his early 20s. And Dan Kaluuya is 31 and whatever. But I mean, he still looks. It's a weird mix, because what I also like about the film is that whenever you're doing a movie based on real people, you have to kind of like resist the urge to show like real archival footage of
Yes.
the actual people. I mean, it gives in at the very, very end, but because Fred Hampton also looked like people styles change. People looked at, like, Fred Hampton looked like an older man, where I feel like Daniel Kaluuya looks very young.
They both have a youthful look to them in like.
Yeah,
I,
it's a
I
different.
don't notice stuff like that unless it's really an extreme. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I'd read one thing on like on Vulture and stuff where they said the age you should have actually cast 21-year-olds or whatever, and I'm like, well, I don't know, because it's things change, and again, these were much more adult-like figures than we'd probably associate with 21-year-olds today, in a lot of ways.
people get too deep in the weeds with some of that stuff sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, there were a whole bunch of it. I mean, as we get into discussions of who gets to play what roles and things like that. And then
Right.
Dan Kaluuya is British, and that was didn't pan out, that controversy, but whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I think he is the best one. It's the showiest role. It is his mostly big speeches, really prominent, loud speeches that like a lot of crowd shots of like the rousing excitement that you get with it. And I like Lakeith Stanfield. It's a little bit, in a way, a harder role, because What I liked, and I don't know exactly how totally accurate it is, but that's okay. Like it essentially takes the Donnie Brasco departed plot and uses it to to incorporate these two guys that happened. It probably did not happen as excitedly as it does in the movie, but uses that kind of, I guess, traditional Hollywood. There's a rat in our
Right.
blah 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 kind of thing, and I like that genre. I really like that genre a lot. And so in that sense, the movie is you've kind of seen the story before in fictional narratives. So I like that it kind of incorporates those kind of beats in a true story. And because of that, I think Lakeith Stanfield's character, you have to play. He's playing someone who has to keep his cool and act like he fits in.
Right.
But on top of that, there's the layer of I also have to be incredibly nervous because my life is on the line at any moment. So there was like one or two moments where I felt like it was a little over the top. Like at the very, there may be some slight spoilers here, or just look on Wikipedia.
Yeah, and I'm glad you
Yeah,
mentioned the spoiler because obviously this is a part of history.
yeah, there's
Look
no,
it up whenever you want. But if anybody is uncomfortable with spoilers, I'm sure we will get into some spoilers with the
yeah,
movie at some point. But
yeah.
go ahead.
And there's also a good doc from the '70s called "The Assassination of Fred Hampton," which, I mean, that's not a spoiler. So, but yeah, like where Lakeith Stanfield, he drugs the drink that he's giving to Fred Hampton, and that to me, it's a little too implied, a little too. He seems extremely nervous, and but it's almost like Fred Hampton would probably say like is something wrong with you? Like you seem a little too jittery. You seem a little like you
Yeah.
seem a little too much. So there were a couple moments where I'm like, okay, he could pull back a bit. But then there in the more quieter moments, I thought he's very good. With Jesse Plemons, when he checks in with him every couple of minutes, every couple of acts about where he is in the progression of the case. I thought he was very good. And I also liked Dominique Fishback as Fred Hampton's wife,
Yeah.
wife's girlfriend. I thought she was really good in a type of role that we've seen 1,000 times as well. But it's not the love story does it's I wouldn't say love story, but it's not like shoehorned in there. Because
No.
I'm sure there could be other movies made about Fred Hampton's life that are lesser than where they like they give that character like one single scene.
Right.
Where I feel like she has more of a presence. She's not just the wife of Fred Hampton. She's more than that.
Right.
And I think that's important when we find out about the son that they would have.
Mhm.
This is all the postscript epilogue of the movie, but as well. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it's funny you mentioned The Departed and Donnie Brasco because I actually have that in my notes. Specifically this movie, the first one that came to mind when I watched it was Donnie Brasco, because you have a lot of those elements, especially in that you have this guy who, in the case of Donnie Brasco, he was, it was police. It was a little bit different, but in this case, you have this guy who is infiltrating this group, and it gets to a point where you wonder how much he associates with this group, how much he connects with this group, versus is he still doing what he's supposed to be doing, which is what made
in Judas and the Black Messiah.
yes, yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
like you get a little bit of that, I think, with Lakeith Stanfield's character towards the end, where you really like, at least to me, it seemed, at times like, oh man, like this guy's really on board with him now. He really believes what he's doing. Well, at the same time, we wonder how much is he still doing his job, and that's what made Donnie Brasco so interesting, and certainly The Departed as well. But
Yeah, and when you think of like that sociological aspect of it, that the Keith Stanfield, like the William O'Neill character, he came from a very rough childhood, rough
right,
background, and so he had to turn to crime at a young age to survive. And because of that, you become an indentured servant by the FBI, saying we're going to lock you away forever, or you're going to infiltrate your own people and
right,
do this for us. And so it obviously, I won't spoil this, but it definitely did weigh on him, and
yeah,
it did impact his life in where he had extreme guilt. And
yeah,
it wasn't really up to him you could say he's not a villain, and that's pretty important
Right.
as well. And the Departed connection, they both have Martin Sheen, but that's the thing I don't like in terms of the acting, is the overall boogeyman hanging over everyone. J. Edgar Hoover, and that performance and that makeup job, it's jokey.
It
And that
seems almost funny at this point that when somebody portrays J. Edgar Hoover, it must be such a tough persona to nail, and like because it becomes a thing of we want you to play this character, but we got to do the makeup, and you got to look exactly like him. So you got to the makeup becomes almost like an entity in and of itself sometimes, with when somebody plays him. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the boogeyman aspect of it. If I had to I like the film a lot. Let me just say that. But if I had to criticize one part of it, it would be that there is a little bit of that extreme, at times, like, whereas the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover are, looked at as these, the very typical type villains, and the Black Panthers are viewed in the almost the opposite way. Whereas the truth, as you like to say about a lot of things, is probably somewhere in the middle. But yeah, yeah, Martin Sheen, it is what it is. Luckily, it's only a minor character.
Yeah, I mean, he's only probably like 10 minutes of the movie. It's just that like it just stands out. And there's actually a good documentary that just came out from Sam Pollard called MLK FBI. And it's about J. Edgar Hoover's quest to the obsession with MLK, and how that was his lifelong, and it's pretty much all archival documentary. MLK FBI worth checking out as a companion piece to find. But yeah, I do think the J. Edgar thing has the character has never totally worked in a movie. Even the Eastwood DiCaprio one was more about. I mean, I think there are interesting things about that too. That's more about his sexuality in other parts of his life. But I think it's always seen as J. Edgar versus the African American civil rights movement of the 1960s, and so I guess you have to include that character in this movie.
Yeah.
But he even like opens the movie with the slides about the Black Panther, and he's the one that says Judas and the Black Messiah. And it's a little overblown, but it's minor. It's minor.
Right. So let's talk about the direction here. Shaka King is the director, and I have not seen any other films. But
Newlyweds, you could toke up, and it's a good small indie.
Yeah.
That was his only other feature.
Right. And I thought the direction here was very good. It was very raw. That's what I liked about it anyway. It manages to convey more details about the political ideology of the Black Panthers while also showcasing these people as human beings. With the whole love story that we talked about, which I liked. I liked the way that was portrayed. It wasn't the centerpiece, but it was there, and it was important to that character at the time, certainly. So, I thought that it was directed in a very good way. The flow of the movie was good, and it was able to be quiet when it wanted to be quiet. It was able to pull back, and linger when it needed to. So yeah, I mean, I thought that was all really good. How about you?
Yeah, and I think that as like a game, you think like, well, what would the Aaron Sorkin version of this be? And you're like, well, we could have the Trial of Chicago 7, I guess. But where it also feels again similar topics, but done in a very different way. Whereas I feel like yes, even this is still like a studio movie, a big Hollywood movie. It feels a little, like you said, a little bit more raw. And even on a very basic level, within the first 5 minutes, you're hearing certain words that you would not hear in Trial of Chicago 7. It feels a little bit more realistic, where everybody is. It's not. I don't mean to use a pun. It's not as black and white. And one of the big things about which I didn't, the little I knew of Fred Hampton anyway, was that one of his big powers is that he was bringing everyone of different races together, and that was one of the big concerns from the government, right?
Right.
So in scenes that could go off, like there's a scene where they confront a pro-Confederacy group. They're not KKK, but it's a pro-Confederate.
Right.
Where again, like a film like this, you can't help but feel the parallels of this very moment in time as well, unfortunately. But it doesn't. But to me, like it doesn't harp on it. So if you catch those parallels, maybe it enhances it for you, but it doesn't drown. It's not a message movie. It
Right.
doesn't feel
No,
like a message movie.
I totally agree. It tells the story it wants to tell, and obviously there are parallels and a lot of connections you could make to the events of the last 2 years. But as you said, it doesn't hammer those points home. Those points are there for us to discover and
Yeah.
discuss.
And I mean, and the film was shot before the events of this past summer and stuff. So like, it didn't even predict some of those things. I
Right.
mean, it shows how often these things happen. But I mean, again, I think that's a big part of getting it out as quickly as they could, I guess, because it does have those extra,
Right. Well,
unprecedented powers.
I would definitely give it thumbs up. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I liked it a lot. I think it's um, some people I think wanted a little bit, because I was interested in hearing about some criticisms or whatever, even and where I think some people wanted something maybe a little bit more, I don't know, gritty or more indie, and um, I feel like it's mainstream. It's a good intro to Black Panthers as well, if
Right.
you want to use it like that.
If they
Uh,
wanted to do more films, along these lines, like films that get a good cast and a good director, I think that this could open that up certainly.
yeah, and it also kind of feels like a good kind of genre-y 70s kind of movie as well. I
Right.
feel like you again, like you kind of know the beats that the story's going to go, and
Yeah.
it doesn't like surprise you. Like it goes exactly kind of how you think it's going to go. But I think in these individual moments, it's where it stands out. And we mentioned the Get Out reunion, also including Lil Rel Howery,
Right.
who finally plays not the comic. Well, I mean, he's kind of a little funny, but I mean, it's not the comic relief. He's actually one of the worst people in a sense. That was a nice little cameo as well. But I really like this as well. It feels very much of a movie of the '70s, like a Sidney Lumet kind of thing. Maybe a
Right.
little
Yeah.
bit
No, I
of
agree. Yeah. That's a good comparison. Um, in researching this, I came across. I wondered like how many other films about the Black Panthers were made, and I was thinking to myself, what would be the first film I remember hearing about them? Certainly, I probably learned about them in school, but in terms of film portrayals, like the scene that immediately came to mind, it was the scene from Forrest Gump. Um, where he goes to the Black Panther meeting. Now, obviously, it's just a very cursory point in that movie, but they certainly have a moment there, which is interesting. But
Didn't you also say that Forrest Gump was how you were introduced to Abby Hoffman for the Trial of Chicago 7?
well, indirectly, because
Yeah, so I'm like
I
that
think that's
whole
what
period, that whole 68, 69 period was all Forrest Gump, man. It's like,
critics out there who are hearing this are rolling their eyes right now.
Forrest went on the moon. You remember? It's like, whoa, who's that guy? Yeah.
But there are other movies about them. There was Panther from 1995 with starring and I think directing Mario Van Peebles.
Oh yeah.
And there's been like more than a dozen documentaries on
Yeah.
either a subject from the Black Panthers or the Black Panthers themselves, including an Agnes Varda short,
Yes.
The Black
Which
Panther.
there is some archival footage in Judas and the Black Messiah from that.
All right. Oh wow.
Yeah, at the end. So they do give a special thanks to Agnes Varda as one of the people in the credits at the end.
Right. And that short is on Criterion, one of her sets somewhere there. There was another one that I I highlighted here. I haven't seen. Maybe you have a Huey Newton story from 2001. The Spike Lee. Yeah, it's Spike Lee. It was a play filmed as a solo performance movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
cool.
like I'm curious to see it because
Yeah.
I like that sort of
For
stuff.
me, the biggest introduction was, remember did you see the Black Power mixtape? It was
No.
probably 2000 and I don't want to say
Wait,
7.
no, you know what? Yeah,
You
you know what? I
seen
think I
it.
have seen that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It is all archival, and it was from like these two Swedish directors who like found all this footage. And like, there's a scene of Angela Davis being interrogated, and she has
Yeah.
speech sitting in the chair. And I feel like now that's become an iconic footage from that movie, and then it's been used in like, I think it's also used in the trial of Chicago 7. You know, it's become such like a part of that movement, that footage and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'd forgotten about that. That documentary. The last one I came across was Night Catches Us from 2010, which is, from what I can look at, a fictional story.
Yeah,
But it stars, not stars, but had directed by Tanya Hamilton, with starring Kerry Washington and Anthony Mackie.
So it just, and a colleague of mine had actually mentioned in response to someone who was talking about the she didn't like that the age difference of the actors and and he was like, well, if you need Hollywood stars, you need recognizable stars to maybe get a movie about this subject made.
Absolutely.
And so, and he actually said, if you don't, then you get something like Night Catches Us, which not to say anything of the quality of the movie, but nobody saw it.
Right.
You know, and so you did need to include big stars, big-ish stars, you know, to get something like this made. So.
Yeah, somebody like Anthony Mackie wasn't as notable a name then.
He was not a Marvel guy yet, and all that. So, you know, he was the 8 Mile guy and everything else.
Right. The 8 Mile guy. That's it.
You're right. A couple of people have brought up Night Catches Us, which I also have not seen. But some people brought that up as one to check out.
Yeah, and like, so yeah, I mean, if anybody out there, like, by all means, check out some of these movies. And I didn't mention all the documentaries. There's a ton of them out there. A lot of them are very critically acclaimed and probably very well worth seeing. And I don't know that I've ever seen a Mario Van Peebles movie. But hey.
Sweet badass, sweet backs, badass. Yeah. I'm also glad that, like you say, this moment in time, like, we're getting these subjects with the amount of attention and budget that we can, that we probably wouldn't have gotten in like the 90s. And Mario Van Peebles was working for like Peanuts, like Melvin, so it's kind of cool that we're in a moment too where you can get something of this, like we said the previous episode, Trial of Chicago 7 had the animated documentary,
right,
and that was pretty much it for a long time, and so the fact that Fred Hampton, now people know Fred Hampton's name,
right, and that's a great thing about this, that that we're able to know more about this group and about these people and about the people involved and what they went through. And it's one of the reasons why I love film and documentaries in general, is because I learn more every day. I'm always wanting to keep learning more. And certainly this movie opened up my eyes to a lot of things and made me want to do research on it. So,
it gives it, more people see this movie than will probably watch a documentary, unfortunately or not. Like, that's the reality. Did you see the Ava DuVernay doc 13th?
No, I haven't. I didn't get a chance
because there's like a 3-minute mention of Fred Hampton and the night he was killed, but that's it. I mean, that's, you don't get anything about his life really. So I would also recommend, like we spoke about it off air, is that you will probably want to see the, now I'm blanking on it, what is it
Eyes
called?
on the Prize too.
Eyes on the Prize too, because it's used in the film in a clever way. First, it's Lakeith Stanfield as the character, and they do an exact replica of the shot from the show, and then they switch to the real footage.
It's very much a gut punch.
Yeah.
But it is used well, and I would recommend checking out that I mean, Eyes on the Prize 2 is like an hour long, but only half of that is, features interviews with the people involved in the Black Panthers. The other half is more about prison and corrections, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But
That's something that might have been in schools that may have been shown as we were growing up, potentially.
yeah, absolutely. Well, let us know what you think of the movie if you have seen it. And I think that there might be like a limit on how long these movies are on
Yeah,
HBO Max. So by
I
all
think it's
means,
like
see it while
yeah,
you can.
I think it's like a 4-week window, and
Yeah,
then it goes, and eventually it'll come back again.
I don't.
It's a weird. I have like 3 days to see the little things left. I have till Sunday.
Right.
I've been pushing it off but I'll do it. Damn it, I'll do it.
Well,
Yeah.
I am anxious to see what you think about that. But anyway, see this while you can. Let us know what you think in the comments. Check out my other show, The Nitty Gritty. And for Erik, my name is Chad, and we will see you next time.